Kevin, I can see that it's snowing there in Pennsylvania. Of course, you're following the special elections there. A region that actually President Trump won by, 20 points in the election. So I know that it's still early there, but what are you seeing? What are you hearing?
Well, we're right outside of where Rick Saccone, the Republican candidate, voted right behind me. He voted here, and he's up against Democrat challenger Conor Lamb, who is surging in the polls, running neck and neck in the polls. There has been high-profile surrogates for both sides. Yesterday, we were at an event with Donald Trump Jr., really trying to mobilize the vote for the Republicans. Former Vice President Joe Biden campaigning along with union leaders for the Democrats. This is remarkable. This is steel country, Sherry. When we talk about tariffs last week, this is the part of the country, southwestern Pennsylvania, where there's really having an impact. Those union workers who went for candidate Donald Trump, helped elect him into the White House. Now the undecided swing voters in this region about whether or not they're going to stick with the Republican agenda or go Democrat. I spoke with one voter yesterday who's backing Rick Saccone because he told me he doesn't want to have this country dragged through impeachment proceedings should Democrats seize control in the midterms. This is, of course, being known as a bellwether. I would note, of course, just from a broader investment standpoint, if you're monitoring this, the developments with CFIUS in particular, a steel industry source that I spoke with this morning, talking about this particular region of the country, telling me that the steel community, the commodities markets are interpreting that CFIUS decision on behalf of Secretary Mnuchin and President Trump as a potential political tea leaf, so to speak, of getting back at China and saying and signaling to the Chinese that the president is going to be really focused on the steel industry and keeping out outsourcing of jobs overseas. So again, this is the president's base. Will they stick with him? We'll have to wait until tonight when the polls close.
Well, and there are certainly some headwinds, weather for one being, it's obviously going to be a little bit more difficult to get to the polls. But if this does flip blue, Kevin, does it have any repercussions for the midterms, given the change in the electoral maps and so on?
Yeah, it's a great question. When I talk with Republican strategists, Vonnie, back in Washington, D.C., they tell me that Republicans are watching this very carefully because should Conor Lamb pull out that political victory, that upset of sorts tonight, it would signal that the progressive grassroots, that the Democratic base is fired up for the midterms. And you could potentially see, according to the sources that I speak with, you could potentially see more Republicans in Washington, D.C. say, hey, wait a minute, I'm going to take a look at retiring because this is just the momentum would seemingly suggest. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. The polls are still open, and the Saccone campaign team is telling me that they're confident with how this is looking. But should there be that upset, a lot of Republicans are going to be recalculating and recalibrating their political futures for the midterm elections.